plasterwork. And she did a lot of that. But she would take pieces of furniture, and this I know from the exhibition. She didn't pick things because they were authentic. She didn't care if they were authentic. She picked things because they had the look she wanted. So there was something I had seen images of the Fairmont Hotel lobby. Well, I had seen that lobby, which was only redecorated in like the 90s or something. There was a piece of a big cabinet which was black with gold stuff on it. I mean, with gold moldings. Apparently, she had it painted. I mean, it wasn't black with gold. She bought it. It was the right look. She cut off the legs. She put it down on a platform base and painted it. I mean, it didn't matter. It's not that it was a many $1,000 antique, but she bought things just for their look. And that was the kind of splashy thing, or like painting this black with the white trim. And this reminds me to tell you that maybe at this point, surrealism in art was around, and Salvador Dali was the most, I don't know if I want to say the most popular, the most attention-getting. I mean, it's not that surrealism was a popular style, but it did inspire, it inspired other art, inspired film design, and it probably was at least something of an inspiration for some of her more dramatic design. This is just to show you the Hampshire House, which is one of the buildings on Central Park South. That is now, most of them are now apartments, condos. But this was a hotel, and this is the garden room. And there was another room in the Hampshire House called the cottage room, which was decorated in with, as I remember, white trellis work. And I was married there. Oh. And I didn't know until about 10 years ago when I saw the Dorothy Draper exhibition that she did the cottage room. I saw a photograph of it. And I don't even remember what the room looked like. I mean, I was busy getting married. It was pretty and it was full of flowers. But I went back and I said to them, I guess it's not there, because it was turned condo, about 10 years ago. And he said, no, they didn't keep the ballrooms. But I thought, I didn't know that I got married in the Dorothy Draper room. And of course, at that point, it wouldn't have been meaningful to me. But she did, I mean, as I said, okay, rooms like that, she designed rooms like that so that they would be very pretty rooms, which would be booked for affairs. And they were. She was featured in magazines. She gave out the fact that she had been on the cover of Time magazine, but the curator of the exhibition told me he went through every issue, and she wasn't. But she was very famous. She did the interior of a car. Now, Raymond Loewy and Walter Dorwin Teague, a couple of the early industrial designers who we'll talk about later in the term, did cars, but they did the exterior. She did an interior, which is, pick a color scheme and upholstery. A couple of people do that now. There have been a couple of cars that I have seen as, interior by, not Tom Ford. Someone else did something recently. So it's tacking a designer name onto something. Wasn't a thing at that time. It's a recent innovation. And Dorothy Draper was very early in having her name be important enough to have it tacked onto something. And this was, it's not, I don't think this is a black wall. I believe it's burgundy wall. The Greenbrier, and this is a perfect example of the kind of thing that the modern Baroque is that fireplace, which is heavy plasterwork in not any particular style. Also, the cabbage roses, she designed that pattern. Schumacher has brought out that pattern again. I don't think they kept it on all along. If they kept it in the line, it certainly wasn't very popular. It's been revived again. Now, the Greenbrier is a resort in White Sulphur Springs, Virginia, which is not near anything as far as I can know. I mean, I wanted to drive there from High Point once and it was too far. It's a large resort. It's a very upscale resort. Have you heard of it? It's pretty well known. And it was a very prestige, go with the whole family. As I said, very upscale. It was probably the kind of resort where you dressed for dinner every night. I don't know, maybe you still dress for dinner every night. And don't forget, this was a time when people weren't flying to Europe, This was before, well, this was at the time they were just starting to maybe go to Florida, because it was just after the war, people were beginning to travel. So they hired a big name decorator to do the interiors, and her contract was such that she had in the contract, which is still in effect today, that any renovation or additions or changes would be done by the Draper firm. So there was an office for Dorothy Draper Inc. on the premises. When she retired, she sold the firm to two men, one of whom was a man named Carlton Varney, who took it over from the other man, and was smart enough, and he's a very good designer and a very successful one, and still does the Greenbrier, and was smart enough not to change the name of the firm. He didn't add his own name, he didn't change it, he decided that was, her name was big enough to carry it even if it was now run by a man. Oh, the other thing that I didn't say, that I forgot to say about Eleanor Brown, because I was talking about women in the design firm, in the decorating business, when she opened her firm, she called it Macmillan Inc. She didn't use her first name. So nobody necessarily knew that it was a woman hiring for, and it was, I mean, people now say that was a very smart move at that time. Dorothy Draper's was Dorothy Draper Inc. She wrote, anyway, the Greenbrier is still done and largely expanded. They had, I'm told, they have a big spa now. I'm told they had an underground bunker for during the war. And so also, you know, I would assume several hundred acres with golf course and all the accoutrements. So this was a big deal, as well as the hotels. One job like this got her other jobs like this. And another area in the Greenbrier, just looking into that, you can see the black and white tile floor. A lot of the colored walls with white molding was a look that she perpetuated. And again, here's more because I wanted to show you the plasterwork. So that kind of thing, okay, she's a designer who, you might look at an interior like this and say that looks like Dorothy Draper. Even if it isn't, that's the kind of look that she's associated with. And here again, even here, using a lot of, she was very fond of Baroque accents. Now here she's using mixed patterns. They don't look like a Victorian mix. They don't look like anything the early designers I told you did. So that she is applying things in a different way. It's a more contemporary for her time interpretation. And this, her, I don't know, maybe her most famous, or I feel as if it's the most famous, because I had gone there, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Who's been to the Greek and Roman galleries? You know where they are? Okay, when you go in the museum, all the way to the left, the dead end of the left. It's now Greek, there's a large courtyard. That, up until 5 years, no, whenever they started construction for the Greek Roman galleries, that was the cafeteria. And way back in the 50s, in the cafeteria, the center of the cafeteria, these two views of the same thing. The center of the cafeteria was a pool, not a swimming pool. It was a pool that I guess was maybe a foot deep. I don't know, a reflecting pool. Very classical looking. And these light fixtures she designed have gotten a lot of attention recently. That one came up at auction, one was in the exhibition. The story I like to tell is when I was a little girl and my mother took me to the museum, I remember eating, I don't remember eating there, I remember the pool. And I don't remember when it went out, and I don't always eat in the cafeteria when I go to the museum, but I know that at one point cafeteria was no longer there, and last year or the year before I was there with my husband and we went to lunch in the cafeteria, and as I was walking in I thought about the pool, and I said to the hostess, who wasn't over 30, I said, when did they take the pool away? And she said, what pool? So I figured by the 1980s the pool must have been gone. And you know, you just don't look at things, but that's how you realize that you've gotten older, when someone someone who you speak to doesn't remember something that you think might have happened recently. And why did they take it out? You know, it was an enormous waste of space. They have the whole center filled with seating.